My brother wasn't supposed to stop by that Tuesday. He was supposed to be in a meeting downtown until 5 o'clock. He told me that himself 3 weeks earlier, the last time I was allowed to answer the front door. So, when the knock came 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I froze at the kitchen sink with my hands still submerged in dishwater, my heart slamming against my ribs before I even turned around. Diane's voice came from the living room. "I'll get it." I heard the door open. I heard a beat of silence, then my brother's voice low and careful. "Hey, is Maya home?" I dried my hands on the dish towel and walked into the hallway before Diane could answer. When I saw my brother standing in the doorframe, I felt something crack open in my chest. Something I'd been holding sealed shut for so long I'd almost forgotten it was there. He looked at me the way you look at someone you recognize but can't quite place, like I was a slightly wrong version of myself. "I tried calling you," he said. 4 times this week. "My phone's been acting up," I said. The lie came out smooth and automatic. I'd told it so many times it barely felt like a lie anymore. "Come in." He looked at Diane. She smiled at him, the same bright, practiced smile she used on everyone. "Ryan's at work," she said pleasantly. "But I'm here. Can I get you something to drink, Marcus?" "I'm good," my brother said. He didn't move his eyes from my face. "Actually, I was hoping to take Maya to grab coffee. We haven't caught up in a while." The air in the hallway shifted. Diane's smile didn't fall. It just went still, the way a candle flame goes still when a window opens somewhere in the house. "Oh, that's sweet. But Maya's actually been dealing with some anxiety lately. She really does better at home. Isn't that right, Maya?" My brother looked at me. I looked at my hands, and that was the moment. That single second of silence that said everything I hadn't been able to say out loud in 8 months. "Go get your shoes," my brother said quietly. Not a suggestion, not a question. The drive to the coffee shop on Clement Street took 11 minutes. I spent all 11 of them staring out the passenger window, watching the familiar neighborhood scroll past like footage from someone else's life. I used to walk these blocks every morning before everything changed. I used to know the name of the man who ran the flower stand on the corner. Now I couldn't remember the last time I'd been outside without Ryan or Diane beside me. My brother parked and cut the engine. He didn't move to get out. "When did it start?" he asked. Not "how are you," not "you seemed off back there." Just the direct clinical question of a man who had already done the math and didn't like the answer he was getting. I stared at the coffee shop window. A woman inside was laughing at something on her phone, her whole body shaking with it. I watched her and felt like I was watching a species I used to belong to. "After Lily turned 1, I said. My voice came out smaller than I expected. That's when it really started. But looking back, it started the night I told Ryan I was pregnant. My brother exhaled through his nose. He was quiet for a moment. "Does he hit you?" "No, never. That's the thing." I turned to face him for the first time since we got in the car. "There's never been a mark. There's never been a raised voice, not really. It's so much quieter than that. That's why I didn't call, because I couldn't explain it in a way that would make sense. I couldn't point to anything and say this. It was more like, you know how if you drain a bathtub really slowly, you don't notice the water level dropping until you're suddenly cold?" He didn't say anything. He was listening the way he used to listen when we were kids and I'd come into his room after a nightmare, completely still. "Diane moved in when I was 7 months pregnant," I said. "Ryan said it made sense because she was between apartments and she could help me with the baby." I was exhausted. I was working 12-hour shifts at the clinic until my 34th week. When she showed up with her boxes and her opinions about my prenatal vitamins, I thought I was lucky. I thought Ryan was being thoughtful. I pressed my thumbnail into the crease of my palm. She started with small things, the way I loaded the dishwasher, the brand of formula I bought when my milk supply drops. Then it was the budget. Ryan said since he was handling the finances and I was on maternity leave, it made sense for him to manage our joint account. I said, okay. I was running on 3 hours of sleep and a 7 pounds baby who only slept in 40-minute increments. I said okay to a lot of things. "The phone," my brother said. I nodded. 6 months ago, He said I was doom scrolling at 2 o'clock in the morning and it was wrecking my sleep and my anxiety was affecting Lily. He said he would take the phone at bedtime and charge it in the office for my mental health. For my mental health. I laughed, but there was nothing in it. Except bedtime kept getting earlier. And then he started taking it in the mornings, too. Just while he was at work, he said, so I could be present with Lily. And then Diane started answering it when people called and telling them I was resting. My brother's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I stopped arguing, I said, because every time I pushed back, Ryan would sit me down and explain, very calmly, very gently, that I wasn't well. That postpartum depression does this, makes you paranoid, makes you combative, makes you see problems where there aren't any. He'd bring me herbal tea while he explained it. He'd hold my hand. I shook my head. The worst part is that for a while I believed him. I am a nurse. I know what postpartum depression looks like. I've watched it in patients, and I sat in my own kitchen and let my husband convince me I was experiencing it, because the alternative, that he was doing this on purpose, was something I didn't have the strength to hold. My brother was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Did a doctor diagnose you?" Ryan did. Every time I questioned anything. I haven't seen my own doctor since my 6-week postpartum checkup. He reached over and gripped my hand once, hard, and then let go. "Okay," he said. "We're going back." The panic that moved through me was physical. A cold wave from my sternum to my fingertips. "Marcus, I can't. If we just go back and argue with them, nothing changes. You leave and I'm still there and it gets worse." "We're not going back to argue," he said, already shifting the car into reverse. "We're going back to get Lily and your documents and whatever else you need. You're not sleeping in that house tonight. They'll say I'm unstable. They'll call Ryan. He'll let them call Ryan." My brother checked his mirror and pulled out of the parking spot. His voice was absolutely level. "I'd love to have a conversation with Ryan." I'd been in that house for 8 months thinking I was invisible, watching, waiting, staying quiet so they wouldn't tighten the leash. But sitting in my brother's passenger seat with the afternoon sun cutting through the windshield, I felt something shift under my ribs. Something that felt almost like anger. Not the hot, useless kind I'd swallowed down 100 times alone in the bathroom. Something colder, something that had been waiting for the right temperature. I had not been idle. When Diane moved in and the walls started closing, I'd started paying attention in a different way. The way I used to pay attention in the ER, cataloging, documenting, building a picture from fragments. Ryan left his laptop on the kitchen counter sometimes. Diane left her email open on the shared iPad she claimed was for recipes. I had learned to move quietly through that house. I had learned to take photos that looked like I was texting and slip memory cards into the lining of Lily's diaper bag. The one place neither of them ever touched because diapers offended Diane's sensibilities. I hadn't been surviving. I had been compiling. My brother pulled up in front of the house. Ryan's car wasn't there. He wasn't due home until 6 o'clock. Diane's car was in the driveway. My brother killed the engine and looked at me. "You have 5 minutes," he said. "I'll handle Diane." I walked up the porch steps behind him. Diane opened the door before we knocked. She'd been watching from the window. I could tell by the careful arrangement of her expression, concerned, warm, slightly wounded. "Marcus, I wasn't expecting I need you to step aside," my brother said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He had 12 years on me and a foot of height on Diane, and he stood in the doorframe like he'd been there his whole life. "Maya is going to get her daughter and her things. This is not a discussion." Diane's warmth flickered. "I think we should call Ryan. He would want to be part of." "Call him," my brother said. "I'll wait." She hesitated. That was the thing about people like Diane. They were fluent in social pressure, in the slow grind of guilt and obligation. They were not prepared for a man who said call him and genuinely meant it as an invitation. I walked past her into the house. Lily was in the playpen in the living room, stacking rings with the focused intensity only a toddler can bring to plastic toys. She looked up when I came in and said "Mama" in the flat, declared of way she said everything, like she was confirming a fact. I picked her up and held her against my chest and stood there for exactly 3 seconds, letting myself feel the specific weight of her before I moved. I went upstairs. I moved fast. I pulled the duffel bag from under the bed and loaded it with Lily's things first, her sleep sack, her raft, the spare formula, and then my own. I didn't fold anything. I didn't look at the room too hard. If I looked at it too hard, I would start to notice all the evidence of the person I used to be. The woman who had picked out those curtains and that comforter and that little succulent on the windowsill. And I would lose my nerve. From the back of the closet, behind my winter coats, I pulled out the waterproof zipper pouch I'd hidden there 4 months ago. Inside, my passport, Lily's birth certificate, the original copy of our marriage license, 2 memory cards, and a folded piece of paper with a login for the cloud account I'd created on the library computer on the one afternoon Diane had let me take Lily to story time alone. Downstairs, I could hear Diane on the phone. Her voice had shifted registers, no longer warm, now clipped and urgent. Calling Ryan. I heard my brother's voice, patient and unhurried. Sure. I'll be right here. I came back down the stairs. Diane was holding the phone out toward me. Ryan wants to talk to you. I'm sure he does, I said. I walked past her to the front door. Diane stepped in front of me, not touching me. She was too careful for that, but positioning herself between me and the exit the way she always did. Through her presence, through implication. Maya, you're not well. You know you're not well. Who is going to look after Lily if you fall apart the moment you leave this house? You need structure. You need support. We have given you both of those things, and this is my brother came to stand beside me. He didn't touch Diane. He looked at her the way a man looks at a spreadsheet that has an error in it. Analytical, unimpressed. I want to tell you something, he said to Diane, and I want you to really hear it. Telling a person they're unwell in order to control their behavior is manipulation. Controlling a person's access to their own phone is coercive. Preventing a mother from leaving a home with her own child is unlawful restraint. He paused. Now, my brother-in-law is on that phone right now, and you're welcome to hand it to me. I have a few things I'd like to say to him. Diane did not hand him the phone. We walked out the front door into an afternoon that smelled like eucalyptus and cut grass. Lily tugged at my collar and pointed at a bird on the neighbor's fence. "Burr," she said. "Yeah, baby," I said. "Bird." My brother's car was warm from the afternoon sun. I buckled Lily into the car seat, the spare one he kept behind the driver's seat he'd kept there since she was born because he was the kind of person who bought a spare car seat for his sister's baby, and climbed into the front. My hands weren't shaking. I noticed that. I had expected them to shake. Ryan called my brother's phone before we were off the street. I listened to one half of the conversation. "I hear you." Long pause. "No, I don't think that's accurate." Another pause. Longer. "Ryan, I'm a forensic accountant. Do you understand what that means? It means that the first thing I'm going to do when I get home tonight is open those memory cards my sister just handed me. And if I find what I think I'm going to find, the conversation you want to have with me right now is not the one you should be having." A pause so long I held my breath. "I'd spend the next 12 hours thinking very carefully about your next move. Good night." He hung up and kept driving. "What's on the memory cards?" he asked. "Bank transfers," I said. Screenshots of texts between Ryan and Diane talking about how they called it managing me. Photos of documents I found in his desk. There's a loan document. I'm pretty sure it's in my name. I didn't sign anything, but it has my signature on it. My brother was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. "How much?" $35,000. The number still made the room spin even now. "And my grandmother's savings account. She left me $48,000 when she passed. I found the transfer records 4 months ago. Ryan moved it out of my account the week after Lily's first birthday. He told me the account had been closed because of inactivity." I stared at the road ahead. I called the bank from the library payphone to verify. The account wasn't closed. It was emptied to a joint account I didn't know we had. My brother exhaled. It was a long, controlled breath. The kind of exhale that comes before something very focused. "And my car," I said. "My car was sold." Ryan told me it was in the shop for a coolant issue. That was 2 months ago. I found the bill of sale in his desk drawer when I was looking for Lily's vaccination records. He sold it to a dealer in Murrin for $9,000. The money went to Diane. To Diane. To Diane. The kitchen table in my brother's house looked like a different world, wide and clean with actual overhead lighting and a coffee maker that wasn't rationed by someone else's permission. Lily sat in the high chair my brother had in his closet. He'd bought it the week she was born just in case, mashing crackers with the dedicated focus of a scientist. My brother sat across from me with his laptop open and the memory card spread between us. He didn't speak much while he worked. He never did when he was inside a problem. I drank coffee and watched Lily and felt the strange floating quality of a person who has just stepped off a ship after a long crossing. The ground is solid, but the body doesn't quite believe it yet. After 40 minutes, he looked up. "Okay," he said. "Here's what we have." He turned the laptop so I could see the screen. 3 columns of figures, color-coded. The loan is real. $35,000 from a private lender, originated 8 months ago. The signature is a forgery. I can see it in the letter spacing. The pen pressure is wrong. You didn't sign this. The proceeds went into the joint account and from there, he pointed, paid down Diane's business credit card. Her aesthetic studio failed in 2023. She was carrying $40,000 in debt. I set my coffee cup down very carefully. The $48,000 from your grandmother's account was transferred in 3 installments over 6 weeks, he continued. 2 of the transfers were while you were in the hospital after Lily's delivery. Ryan had your online banking credentials. He accessed the account from his home IP address. I can verify all of this. He paused. Maya, this isn't a marriage problem. This is wire fraud. This is forgery. This is financial exploitation of a dependent spouse. These are felonies. The word landed in the kitchen like a stone dropped in the still water. What do I do? I said. Tonight. Nothing. Tonight, you sleep. He closed the laptop and looked at me directly. Tomorrow morning, I have a call with a colleague who specializes in financial crimes. We put together a package, the memory cards, the bank records, the forgery analysis, and we take it to the district attorney's office. I have a contact there. He hesitated for a moment. And we call a family law attorney. For the divorce and for Lily. The word divorce sat in the air between us. I'd been circling it for months, unable to get closer than orbit because every time I tried my brain served up the list of reasons it was impossible. No money, no car, no phone, no proof, nowhere to go. Just the bars of the cage enumerated. None of those things were true anymore. I reached across the table and picked up Lily's cracker before it hit the floor. She gave me a look of extreme betrayal. I gave it back. She went back to her work. There's one more thing, I said. In the texts between Ryan and Diane, there are messages about a property, an investment property in Ryan's name. He told me we didn't own any property except the house. I slid one of the memory cards across to my brother. Last file on that card. Screenshot of a property transfer record dated 4 months after our wedding. My brother's eyebrow moved approximately 2 millimeters, which for him was equivalent to anyone else's jaw dropping. He acquired a property, I said, using a down payment that came from our wedding gift checks. The checks were made out to both of us. He deposited them into his personal account and I didn't notice because we were on our honeymoon and I trusted him. Where's the property? Petaluma. It's been rented out for 3 years. The rental income goes into an account I've never seen. My brother was quiet for a moment. Then he said very mildly, Maya, you've been sitting on all of this for 4 months. I needed enough, I said. Every time I thought about leaving, I thought, if I go without enough, he'll have a lawyer by morning and I'll have nothing. He'll say I abandoned the home. He'll move for custody before I can blink. I needed enough to walk out and not have to look back. I met my brother's eyes. I was just waiting for the right moment. You showing up today was the right moment. He nodded slowly, the same way he'd nodded when I was 8 and had explained at length why I had engineered the particular disaster he'd come home to find. with the expression of a person recalibrating their entire understanding of a situation. "Okay," he said. "Okay," he said. "Let's go through all of it." Ryan came to my brother's house at 9:15 that night. He knocked instead of ringing the bell, which I'd noticed he always did when he was trying to appear reasonable. He was wearing the blue fleece he knew I'd always liked, and he had his hands in his pockets in that easy, disarming way he had. He looked like a man stopping by to work out a small misunderstanding between two adults. My brother answered the door. I stood in the hallway behind him, Lily asleep on my shoulder. "I just want to talk to my wife," Ryan said, calm, warm, faintly aggrieved. "Whatever happened today, we can work it out. I think Maya's been having a hard time and she needs." My brother held up an envelope. "I'd like you to look at something before you finish that sentence." Ryan's gaze moved to the envelope. Something behind his eyes went very still. "Inside that envelope," my brother said, "is a summary of the financial records I've spent the last 4 hours reviewing. A forged loan in my sister's name, the transfer of her inheritance, the sale of her vehicle and the routing of those funds to your sister's personal debt. And the rental property in Petaluma that Maya has never seen, purchased with jointly owned funds." He paused. "I've already sent copies to my attorney. I'll be filing a report with the Marin County District Attorney's Office when it opens tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Ryan's easy expression had not moved, but a kind of pallor had settled under it, the way a tide goes out and leaves the rocks exposed. "Now," my brother said, "you can spend the next 8 hours doing what you would like to do. Or you can spend those 8 hours consulting your own attorney about a voluntary return of assets, which would be looked upon considerably more favorably by a judge than a contested hearing." He lowered the envelope. "But what you're not going to do is walk into my house and tell me that my sister is unwell, because we both know that isn't what's happening here." Ryan stood on the porch for a moment that lasted a very long time. He looked at me over my brother's shoulder. I looked back at him and held my daughter and didn't say anything at all. There was nothing left to say. I had said it all in those 4 months of quiet documentation, in every file on those memory cards, in the folder I'd been building in the library on my one afternoon a week of borrowed freedom. He left without speaking. Diane called twice that night. My brother let both calls go to voicemail. In the morning, we listened to them, and in the first one, she was angry. In the second one, she was crying. Neither one was an admission of anything, but her lawyer called my brother's attorney 3 days later to begin asset recovery negotiations, which was an admission of everything that mattered. The family court hearing was 6 weeks after that. The forensic accounting report ran to 41 pages. Ryan's attorney tried to argue joint marital assets, and then tried to argue that my grandmother's transfer had been a gift to both of us, and then stopped trying to argue anything when my brother's colleague presented the digital footprint of every transaction, including the exact timestamp of the fraudulent loan signature, which was created at 11:47 on a Tuesday night when I had the hospital records to prove I was attending a postpartum support group on the other side of the city. I received full physical custody of Lily. I received a judgment for the return of the inheritance, the loan proceeds, and the proceeds from the sale of my car, plus documented rental income from the Petaluma property for the 3 years I'd been unaware of its existence. Ryan pled no contest to 2 counts of forgery and 1 count of financial fraud. Diane settled a civil suit for her portion of the diverted funds and avoided criminal charges on the condition of full repayment within 18 months. Her attorney sent a letter that used the phrase misallocation of resources, which is the most expensive euphemism I have ever read. I moved into my own apartment on a Saturday in April, 3rd floor, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen window that looks out over a courtyard where someone has planted climbing roses that haven't bloomed yet, but will. I carried boxes up the stairs with my brother and his wife and my mother, who cried when she saw Lily toddle from the bedroom to the kitchen on her new unsteady legs and say, "Mine," about everything she passed. My phone is on the counter charging. It belongs to me. No one checks it at night. The first evening I put Lily to bed in her own room, with the mobile I picked out and the rug I chose, and the name on the wall spelled in wooden letters I painted myself. I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe in the dark for a long time. I thought about the woman on the gravel shoulder of the highway in that other story, walking toward something she couldn't name yet. I thought about how long it takes to understand that the walls around you are not protection. I had been a nurse for 5 years before I left the clinic. I knew how to assess a situation from inside it. I knew the difference between a patient who was declining and a patient who was rallying, even when the rallying looked like stillness from the outside. For 8 months I looked like I was disappearing. I was actually paying very close attention. I started back at the clinic on a Tuesday. My supervisor had kept my position open. She told me later she had a feeling. The first patient I took vitals on was a woman about my age who was there for a routine checkup, and who laughed at something her husband said in the waiting room, and whose whole body leaned toward him when she laughed. I stood at the door for a second and felt a particular ache of recognizing what real looks like because you've spent enough time with counterfeit. I wasn't grateful for what I'd been through. I want to be clear about that. Gratitude is the wrong word for surviving something you shouldn't have had to survive in the first place. But I was standing in that doorway in my scrubs with my badge and my stethoscope and my own hands and my own name, and the apartment key in my pocket opened a lock that only I had a copy of. That was enough. For right now, today, that was exactly enough.